This video is sponsored by Enlisted, but more on that shortly. In this video, I'll be focusing on the reasons why I am currently excited for this particular list of confirmed RPGs of 2026 and beyond. And that absolutely does not mean that all of these will be good, but they do all possess some quality or idea that stands out to me as an RPG lover. Let's begin. Starting off with Solasta 2, which may actually enter into its early access period sometime this year, but its full release is certainly next year or beyond. So Solasta 2 is a turn-based CRPG style game where you'll be controlling a party of 4, and it will offer co-op multiplayer. And the game is largely based off of 5th edition rules and mechanics, so yes, BG3 players, you'll have less of a learning curve to deal with here. Now, the biggest reason why this one is on my personal RPG radar is because the first Solasta was an absolute blast. And after that game, and of course BG3, I would love to play another D&D-like game. Solasta 1 was definitely a bit rough around the edges and not even close to being a perfect game, but it was a ton of fun, it had charm, and the devs at Tactical Adventures really nailed giving players a more true 5th edition experience when specifically speaking of rules and mechanics. BG3 is a bit more lax with 5th edition rules, while Solasta, you could say, is the more hardcore version of that, which is quite appealing to me. I should point out that the devs recently announced that they are switching from the 2014 SRD 5.1 rule set to the 2024 version, and although at its core it's not crazy different from 2014, it does make some changes, such as more combat options for martial classes, and it reworks some features like the Ranger's favored terrain. And this is another reason why I'm excited for this game in particular, as I don't know much about the updated D&D rule set, but it will be fun to see and experience some of these changes, or upgrades, if you will. Now, Solasta 2 does have a free demo available right now on Steam, which I did mess around with a few months ago, and I really enjoyed it. And I do see great potential in this game for more of an indie type CRPG. One thing that I really love to see studios do after they experience some level of success is to use their success to further improve future projects rather than stagnate. And Tactical Adventures with Solasta 2 appears to be doing exactly that when compared to their first game. Not only are visuals clearly upgraded, but the devs have also implemented some features such as the ability to pull the camera down into more of a third-person perspective, and you can move around with WASD. Something that, in my opinion, allows for much more immersion into the world when you want to feel that way. You just go right down into your character and experience the world. They also have heavily upgraded how merchant trading works, voice acting, the list goes on, and this makes me quite excited to see what else they have up their sleeve. Up next is the Expanse, Osiris Reborn, a game in development by Owlcat Games, a studio that has gained quite the positive reputation in the CRPG community. The interesting thing about Osiris Reborn, though, is that it will be Owlcat's first game that is not a CRPG. It will be a third-person action RPG. Now, as much as I love CRPGs, I'm really excited to see what Owlcat can do with an action RPG. And the biggest reason why this game is on my radar is because I think the action RPG genre needs more studios like Owlcat that know and are not afraid to create depth with their systems and mechanics. I don't want Owlcat to abandon CRPGs, but it'll be nice to see a studio like them come into the action RPG genre. Now, Owlcat is known for having very deep, sometimes rather complex RPG mechanics in their games, as well as having characters with a ton of depth. And the thought of them bringing some of this depth to an action RPG is really exciting to me, as action RPGs tend to suffer from the opposite, as many of them are a mile wide and a puddle deep. Now, of course, we don't know yet how deep Owlcat will go with Osiris Reborn. It could end up being rather shallow, but judging by Owlcat's history and the experience that their devs have, I would lean more towards predicting that this will be an action RPG that has actual deep RPG systems and mechanics and fully fleshed out characters, etc. Owlcat has announced that there will be a companion system and that our crew will be the heart of our story, and that the combat is not just sprint around like a chicken with your head cut off action RPG combat. It will be a tactical type of action combat system where you'll be able to issue commands in real time and coordinate with your squad. It's also important to note here that the Expanse, which is the franchise that Osiris Reborn is based on, is a book and television series as well. I've watched 2 seasons on Amazon, and I also have the books on my shelf, and I gotta say, the Expanse TV show has turned fantasy-loving Wolfheart, who never cared much for space shenanigans, into a bit of a sci-fi nerd. I absolutely love the show so far, and I think it's going to be a good universe to have an RPG set in. And also, it's rather low sci-fi. I don't know if that's an actual genre, but a lot of you guys know low fantasy, or more grounded fantasy is my personal favorite. I like when they do this with sci-fi as well, when there's a big element of believability to a lot of it, and it's not just over the top, craziness, aliens running around everywhere, etc. This is a little bit more grounded, and that's appealing to me. The devs have confirmed that Osiris Reborn will take place during the events of Season 1 to halfway through Season 3, I believe, which is one of the big reasons why I find myself really excited for this one. And although we will be forming our own story and adventure in this game, the background events that shape the universe and the show and books will be relevant in the game. And we are told we can even look forward to seeing a few characters from the show and books. The game will have a closed beta at some point. We have no date yet though, but I will certainly be diving deep into this one on the channel when that day comes, and I hope it turns out great. Next up is Fable, an upcoming third-person fantasy action RPG. And yeah, like a couple others on this list, I can't predict with any certainty that it will turn out to be good, but I also can't deny that I am highly anticipating seeing some actual real raw gameplay, whenever that may be. And I do think if this game is done right, it has a ton of potential. If the devs don't ignore the systems and mechanics that made the OG Fables so great and renowned, we could be looking at some great fun with this next Fable. For example, one of my greatest memories in Fable was the morality system and how that tied into your character's appearance. The more good deeds that you would do, the more heavenly your character would start to look, and they would have a halo above their head. Over the course of the game, you would just start forming into this heavenly character, and the more evil actions that you commit, the more evil and demonic your character would start to appear, and you can end up growing a full set of devil-like horns. This type of choice consequence was just so much fun to experience in an RPG, even though, the Fable games, at least the first one's not a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, but having little things like this, RPG lovers eat this stuff up, and it made Fable feel quite unique, and it was really fun to mess with these systems. Another reason why Fable made the list, though, is simply because Fable 1 holds a special place in my heart. I still remember exactly where I was when I played it for the first time on my Xbox, and the thought of returning to the franchise over 20 years later is quite compelling. Visually speaking, from what we can see, the game does appear to have really good visuals and also an art style that I'd say fits Fable. It's okay to have a little bit of Disneyfication in the Fable franchise, unlike with Dragon Age where it doesn't fit at all. And I'm looking forward to seeing the world of Albion created with modern technology. Like I said, this game could turn out to be garbage. I don't know what the delay was for. It could be good or bad. If those of you guys that don't know, the game was delayed into 2026 for reasons that are unknown. But regardless, as of right now, I'm looking forward to seeing more on this game. But before we continue on, let's talk about this video's sponsor, Enlisted. Enlisted is a squad-based first-person shooter that skillfully combines PvP with PvE combat, and it's available now for free on PC and consoles. Get ready to take command of a squad of AI-controlled soldiers as you lead them into some of World War II's most pivotal battles, facing off in massive clashes against other players' squads. My personal favorite aspect of Enlisted is that you can be who you want to be on the battlefield. Be a medic, or an engineer, or perhaps a radio operator calling in massive carpet bomber strikes that can turn the tide of a battle. It's up to you to utilize the unique roles and skills of your soldiers and coordinate tactics with fellow squad leaders to lead your team to victory. As far as who's in the fight, well, you'll be fighting on the side of the United States, Germany, the Soviet Union, and Japan, and you'll be unlocking hundreds of weapons, tanks, and aircraft to customize your squad with. In fact, there's over 400 of those, all of which are authentic representations of their historical counterparts. And you can jump into the action right now by playing Enlisted for free on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox using my link in the pinned comment or video description. New players on PC will also get a special bonus pack with multiple items, 4,000 silver, and 3 days of premium access. But make sure to hurry, as this is a limited time offer that you don't want to miss. Now let's jump back into the sci-fi genre to a game called Exodus, a AAA sci-fi RPG being developed by Archetype Entertainment. a studio owned by Wizards of the Coast, which, yes, does cause some worry and hesitation. I totally understand. But from what we've seen so far, I'd say it's looking and sounding pretty darn good. One of the big reasons why I'm excited for this one is that Archetype Entertainment was formed by several previous BioWare devs, like notable ones that worked on some of BioWare's greatest RPGs, such as the Mass Effect franchise, the OG Baldur's Gate, KOTOR, the list goes on. With Mass Effect hype seemingly at an all-time low due to EA and BioWare not looking too hot these days, I'm not even going to include ME5 on this list, many sci-fi RPG lovers seem to be turning to Exodus to hopefully satisfy their Mass Effect itch. There's still a lot of unknown gameplay details, but the game does appear to be focusing heavily on story and companions. Now, apart from just sounding like a cool RPG, one of the biggest reasons why I'm excited to learn and see more about this one is that Archetype seems to be going pretty heavy on world building and lore for their universe. I see lore posts quite often on their socials. They just released an encyclopedia, which, as a matter of fact, I just ordered it and I should be getting it in the mail hopefully sometime soon. And there's also already an actual real book out that helps establish the world and lore called Exodus, the Archimedes Engine by Peter F. Hamilton, a well-known sci-fi author. I've only heard good things about the book, and I do have it on my shelf, and I plan on reading it soon. But I absolutely love when studios place a focus, or at the very least give proper attention to lore and world building. And everything I have read about Exodus, the creatures, the planets, the lore behind the human race, etc., has all been really, really interesting and done in a very mature, interesting way. They even have these genetically engineered animals that have been given human-like intelligence that can talk and stuff like that, which sounds kind of stupid, but it actually is done in a very interesting, non-stupid looking way in this game. And I'm a huge animal lover, so having like these intelligent animals in a mature feeling sci-fi game is exciting. Another major aspect of Exodus that is pulling me in is that the devs are placing a huge emphasis on choice consequence. I guess we'll find out when the game actually comes out. Of course, be a little bit skeptical here, but a lot of things in this game tie into the very important time dilation system. Seems to be very, very important to the game, which in Exodus lore, time dilation is when you travel at light speed or whatever. You basically travel into the future relative to the place that you left behind. Now, supposedly, we the players will be faced with some really interesting, many times very tough time dilation decisions where we may be choosing to travel at the cost of letting loved ones back at home age drastically, and perhaps even some of them may pass away. From a story perspective alone, even without choice consequence, this is quite interesting, but what is really appealing here is that the time dilation system seems to be mostly in the player's hands. We will be faced with some really tough consequential circumstances versus the game just forcing them all on us like like we're watching a movie. We get to choose. And that is quite intriguing. I'll definitely have a dedicated video on this one going much more into detail sometime soon. Hopefully Archetype can pull it off. Next up is the Wayward Realms, a seriously open world first-person action RPG. Marketing terms, they're calling it a grand RPG, the first grand RPG, being developed by Once Lost Games, a studio formed by some of the OG Elder Scrolls devs. But unfortunately, Julian LeFay, one of the OG Elder Scrolls devs, passed away a couple weeks ago. So rest in peace to Julian, thoughts out to his family, and hopefully his vision for this game will come true. Do note that anything that I show in this video isn't like official gameplay or anything like that, but the devs did say we should be getting an early access gameplay trailer sometime soon. Now, this game is probably not quite what you would expect, as it's heavily based on procedural generation. This is basically Daggerfall 2.0 in many ways, minus the Elder Scrolls lore. And Daggerfall, for those unaware, was the second Elder Scrolls game in the Elder Scrolls franchise, right before Morrowind. When I say proc gen, though, I really mean proc gen. The map of this game should be the size of thousands of Skyrims. I even calculated 5,400 Skyrim maps in a quick calculation that I did. And yes, I'm very aware that large does not equal good, especially this large. And I'm very well manned up not liking this game, as it may turn out to feel really shallow or uninspired. With that said, though, Daggerfall does have a certain charm to it, and it has a fan base that really loved it for their own reasons. And I'm very curious to see where proc gen technology is at just about 30 years later for a game like this. And if the game fails, whatever, I'll just do something else. I'm very interested in seeing how this turns out, though, which is where my anticipation comes from. Although there will be thousands of quests, many of which will still fall into the proc gen category, there's no main story in this game like most other RPGs that you'll play. You are really role-playing in this game. In the Wayward Realms, you'll literally spawn in, go and do whatever you want, and the game is supposed to have some sort of virtual DM system, like almost like a god in the sky that reacts to what you choose to do, you know, changing the proc gen systems around. There's even some world events where like entire cities can end up being demolished. But ultimately, you're going to be doing things, the virtual DM is going to be reacting, and you'll be crafting your own experience. Now, you can focus on a faction, be a hermit. How about just attempting to walk across the entire world? You can be a dungeon delver. You can try to assassinate a mayor of a town and see what happens, or maybe even just be a player that collects lore. Even when it comes to the type of character that you want to play in terms of class, in this game, it is said there is going to be no classes. You'll form and build your character into your own idea of a class. So you can focus more on stealth and thievery and use daggers, etc. Or you can be that cliche knight in shining armor, or perhaps focus on being more of a charismatic noble. You don't have to have a combat focus. You will build yourself into these roles, finding spells and weapons, and your character's skills will level up the more that you choose to use said skill, a system of progression that I am a fan of in RPGs. Like I said earlier, this could also suck and everything might be shallow as hell and just not work as intended, but I do like to see a studio trying something different here. I mean, we have studios that do proc gen, but this is Daggerfall 2.0, and we haven't seen a game really do that. I don't know, I think since Daggerfall, and I'm excited to see what becomes of this. Now, another reason why this one makes my list is because the developers keep dropping really mature lore tidbits on their socials. It seems like they're trying to have a healthy dose of lore and world building for the game to work off and for us to discover, and I love to see that. Supposedly, the game is going to enter into an early access period at some point this year, so yes, on this channel, I will be all over that, testing it out, seeing what it's all about, giving my opinion, etc. So I got you guys covered. Next up is Blood of the Dawnwalker, a single-player open world dark fantasy action RPG being developed by Rebel Wolves, which was formed by some ex-CDPR devs, some of whom which played very important roles in The Witcher and Cyberpunk. In fact, one of the founders of this new studio was the director of Witcher 3 and co-director of Cyberpunk, and Conrad is now the director of this game, Dawnwalker. And this is, of course, one of the reasons why this game makes my list, because it's exciting to think of devs like Conrad branching off from a large corporation of a company to do their own thing. In fact, in one of Dawnwalker's videos, Conrad even says that his ideas for Dawnwalker would just be too risky for a company like CDPR to green light. Also, just today, Rebel Wolves did announce that they are moving the camera back a bit further away from Cohen, offering that option. It was a very, very common complaint with the gameplay reveal, which you'll be seeing mostly of in this video, but it's great to see studios listen to feedback. One of the reasons why this game is on this list. Now, we did see a fairly long gameplay segment of the game in its alpha stages, and although nothing too insanely impressive here, I'm still really excited for the overall idea of this game, with the biggest appeal being that the game is being called a narrative sandbox, meaning there's supposedly going to be a ton of different ways to approach situations and quests in the game, alongside a hefty amount of choice consequence, making no two players experience the same game. The main character is called Cohen, and he is a Dawnwalker, which is basically half vampire, half human, and because of that, he has different forms of himself, a more human-like form in the daytime and a more vampiric form at night. We're told players can choose to do quests in the daytime or the nighttime, both of which can offer very different experiences from one another, not only from a gameplay standpoint with Cohen's change in powers, but also narratively speaking and environmentally speaking, as the world does change quite a bit from day to night. Now, Cohen's main mission in this game is to save his family from the vampiric overlords that have taken over, but one of the big catches here is that the game only has 30 days and 30 nights. It only gives you 30 days and 30 nights to do this, so there is some sort of time system, but it's important to note that time does not progress without the player intentionally and knowingly doing so. So if you're just out in the open world exploring and doing random stuff, it's not like the 30 days is ticking away on you. You will intentionally and knowingly know when you go on to nighttime and then on to the next day, etc., which tend to be bigger story moments. Now, yes, I am a bit worried about the 30-day, 30-night system not being something I enjoy and feeling like it puts too much pressure on me, and I know many others are concerned as well. But honestly, I'm also kind of excited as it's quite unique for an open world RPG, and we already have a million other open world, cliche action RPGs out there, so it's cool to see a studio trying something different, even if I end up not liking it. Back to the narrative sandbox thing, Rebel Wolves even mentioned that you can attempt to kill the vampire overlord, the leader of the vampires, Brensis, very early on in the game. If you so choose, you'll probably fail, but you have that choice as a player to basically go to the end game content right away, which is kind of cool. I mean, hopefully the game incentivizes you to experience the game itself, and it's not easy to do that, but it's cool that you have the agency to do that if you want to attempt it. Another reason why this one has pulled my interest is that it is dark, mature, and gritty, or at least it appears to be as of right now, and it takes place in medieval Eastern Central Europe, the Carpathian Mountains. So we have the medieval touch here with some real history going on, alongside some dark, somewhat grounded fantasy, and low fantasy medieval type games tend to be my personal favorite, games, media, books to consume. And that's one of the reasons why I'm also excited. I hope they keep leaning into that. The first trailer was quite medieval and brutal. Moving on to The Witcher 4, since we just talked about ex-CDPR devs, no release date or even a year for this one yet, but we know that CDPR is currently, working hard on this one. The Witcher 3 was one of the best-selling RPGs of all time, so I don't think The Witcher 4 really needs like an introduction here as to what type of game it is. But I will say that in this next installment of the franchise, we will not be playing as Geralt. We'll be playing as Ciri. But actually, I'll take that back, because it is still possible that we might be playing as Geralt in some parts of the game, like we did with Ciri in The Witcher 3. But Geralt has not been advertised as the main protagonist or player character. Now, the footage that you see in the background is footage from CDPR's tech demo, so keep that in mind. This is not real gameplay, but clearly it's being used to show us players what to expect, and I plan on holding CDPR to this standard. As many of you are aware, CDPR does have quite the interesting past with what some may call deceptive marketing, so take what you see with a grain of salt, of course, but my job here is to be honest with you all, and I'd be lying if I didn't say that I'm not optimistic about The Witcher 4 as a game that it will become, even if it doesn't become it on launch. Now, the reason for this is, despite Cyberpunk's very rocky launch, Cyberpunk, in my opinion, is still a really, really impressive game, even if it took a bit for the game to get there. So although I can't guarantee that The Witcher 4 will have a good launch and be everything that CDPR says it will be, looking at CDPR's two previous major games, Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk, both of these games are still phenomenally highly successful games and loved by so many, which means that CDPR's track record when it comes to games in their final form is still really, really good. Also, Cyberpunk's DLC Phantom Liberty was really well received, I believe, which I'd say is good to see CDPR heading in that positive direction after Cyberpunk's launch. Now, I could sit here and tell you, all the things I like about The Witcher 3 that makes me excited for The Witcher 4, but it's nothing you all probably don't know. I'm a fan of the franchise, and I just love mature RPGs that have real choice consequence with deep lore and world building, and The Witcher franchise has all of that. Despite what I would say, The Witcher 3 has a lot of flaws too, but it's a phenomenal game overall and has so many great RPG systems. I'm currently replaying the game, and I'm also reading the actual Witcher books, as I would like to become an expert on the lore to cover this game in depth when it comes out. And when a game franchise has enough material for me to actually do this, spend months just reading about things, that gets me really excited. So if this game turns out good, I can see myself doing hundreds of videos on it, and that's the shit I live for in games. Next up is a game in development that some of you may have never heard of, and it's called Emberville. Not the type of game, visually speaking, that I typically would care about, but for several reasons, this one has been pulling my interest. As you can tell, this is a game in its early stages here, early alpha. It's a 2D game, and it looks pretty old school. With that said, its visuals have some touches of modernity. Okay, we'll move on. In it as well, such as with the lighting and some of the animations, etc., which is quite appealing in my opinion to combine old school with new age. So we have this nostalgic look going on here, but also you won't feel like you're actually playing a game on Windows 96. And one of the biggest reasons why Emberville made this list, though, is because Carnage is behind this game. He is the game designer, creative director, and producer. Now, some of you might roll your eyes at a content creator, streamer, making a game or saying that they're making it, and I get it, but I feel like Ko has a real chance here at being an outlier. He is a respected content creator, not known to be in any scandals or scams or anything like that. A lot of people trust him. And most importantly, he is huge into the RPG genre, which includes CRPGs. So I share a lot of similar RPG game tastes with Ko, even when it comes to the more niche genres. And that makes me really feel like this game may actually align with what I would want in a game like this. For example, in Emberville, you do not start off as a particular class, but you'll eventually find some NPCs that will inform you that when you meet certain prerequisites, and in some cases complete certain quests, you can become a class. I already like the idea of this, as it's deeper than just, either starting as a class or just talking to an NPC and becoming a class. The game is making you work for it already, and I think that's good. It adds depth and it adds meaning to a lot of things. When you do become a class, you will level up said class, so each class will have its own level, and you'll gain access to new abilities, passives, etc. But you can also change your class. But when you do so, you'll become the level of the class that you change to, whatever level that class is at. Also, as you level up a class, you'll be unlocking special inheritable traits from that specific class, and these traits will stay with your character even when you change to another class. So there's incentive to level up multiple classes, to get access to some special passives that will allow for some more unique builds, etc. I guess there's some form of multi-classing going on here. And I think it's really cool to hear about stuff like this in this type of more old school themed 2D game. It's quite appealing. There's a lot more ideas that Ko has publicly spoken about with Emberville that just sound like the game is right up my alley. We have day and night cycles, resting bonuses, lore tidbits to discover. There's a town building system which plays an important role, weapon systems. The game will have some sort of skill system where the more you use swords, for example, the better that you'll get with swords, something I am a huge fan of. I love that system in RPGs. The dungeon system sounds quite interesting, as you will be clearing dungeons for the goodies, kind of like an ARPG, on top of having quests and a main story and all of that good stuff. So really cool to see all of this in a game like this. Maybe I'm just not in touch with this pixel type genre, and there's a ton of games like this, but I don't know, I haven't really seen them, so this one's making me excited. Now, Ko did say that he'll be doing an early access period at some point, but we don't have dates or anything yet. I will certainly be checking it out on the channel, though, at the very least, doing some streams. And the final game on this list, you guessed it, is The Elder Scrolls 6. Like with The Witcher 4 and CDPR, I totally understand any hesitation when it comes to Bethesda. And yes, I do have a ton of concerns and worries myself. With that said, I just can't lie to y'all. The idea of starting Test 6 for the first time, hearing the music, getting the step out moment into the open world, it's all very exciting to think about. A lot of my anticipation for Test 6 comes down to, of course, the Elder Scrolls franchise just being one of my favorite franchises and series of all time. Despite none of the games being particularly exceptional when it comes to systems and mechanics, actually kind of underwhelming in a lot of areas. When speaking on Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim, they all still have this charm. It's just really hard to describe. It's like a lot of things in these games, they're kind of like low quality, but they're amazing at the same time. For example, the combat kind of sucks, but I also kind of love it. The NPCs are stupid, and many of them stupid looking, but I still get joy out of interacting with them. The list goes on. Now, one of the greatest things about the franchise is, of course, the world building and lore. I'm a big fan of Tamriel, and Bethesda seems to do a really good job at immersing the player within the world. They nail both of those categories quite well, and for some reason, other categories, even though they are underwhelming when you compare it to other like more AAA like companies, it doesn't really matter for the Elder Scrolls games. They still, for some reason, are phenomenal. One of the greatest things about the franchise is the world building and lore. I'm a big fan of Tamriel, and Bethesda seems to do a really good job at immersion and immersing the player within the world, even if many of the game systems and mechanics are a little on the subpar side, or perhaps even underwhelming when you think of what they could be. We don't have hardly any info on Test 6, just that this is currently the game that Bethesda is focusing on. It is possible that the game will suck ass, absolutely. I'm with many of you in accepting that Bethesda is just not the same Bethesda that they used to be, and that may lead to disappointment. But with that said, I still think the game has a chance at being pretty good, and if they can at the very least once again nail the world, the continuation of world building and the feelings of immersion, I can see myself spending quite a lot of time back in Tamriel. And this brings us to the end of the video. Big thank you to Enlisted for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to play it for free on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox right now by using my link in the pinned comment or video description. New players on PC will also receive a special bonus pack that includes multiple items, in-game currency, and premium account time. Thank you all so much for watching. All of these games on this list, I'm hoping I will cover in depth, maybe with the exception of Emberville, as it might just be a game that I more so play for fun and maybe do a couple videos. But all the other RPGs, I really am hoping I can focus on this channel. So if you're into any of these, be on the lookout. I will be covering their announcements and gameplay reveals, etc. as time goes on. Let me know what you guys think about all these games down below, and feel free to join the Discord. The link is below in the video description and all that good stuff, and I'll catch you all on the next one.